Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode where you get me, minus Kate, but plus an awesome guest. So today, Kate was unfortunately not able to be here with us for recording, but I'm going to be doing this episode with Samuel Eshleman Latimer, and this topic is one I'm really excited about, because we're going to be talking about how DBT can help you be less afraid of conflict. And as somebody who's been working on this pretty much my entire time that I've been in therapy myself, this is always something that's a continual area of growth for me. And I know it's going to be really helpful for a lot of you listening, because Kate and I get questions all the time from people that really center around this, right? You're struggling with a conflict with somebody in your life that you care about, and you're not sure what to do next, and you want to act skillfully. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground in today's episode about this. But before we dive into that, the thing that I chose, Kate had nothing to do with this. The thing that I chose for us to promote this month is actually something very much about Kate and her clinic, which is that if you don't know, Kate's clinic does a free drop-in DBT discussion group a couple times a month. The timing of that is that it's every other Thursday. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we know, of course, timing-wise, that may not work for many folks out there. But also, if it works for you, it's a group that you can join as often or as little as you want, because it's drop-in, where you show up with other people who have been through DBT groups, and you guys talk about how you're using DBT or any challenges that you're having with DBT. So it's different than a traditional skills group where you're being taught what the skills are. You know, you joining this group, you already have an understanding of what the skills are. It's now really having a space where you can talk through how you're using them, which is so needed. So that link is going to be in the show notes if you think you would ever want to join. We also post about it regularly in our Facebook group when the discussion group is happening, and it would be amazing to see you there. It's not facilitated by Kate herself, but the people who do facilitate it, Kate really trusts, and they're people who are well-versed in DBT, gone through, her group many times, and they know their stuff. So consider joining the drop-in discussion group if you think it could benefit you. And that having been said, Samuel, I'm now going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself to our listeners, and we'll really start kicking the episode off here.
Thank you, Michelle. I am delighted to be here. And just to introduce myself, so my name is Samuel, and I am a clinical psychologist that focuses on conflict management. I really dedicated this phase of my life to working on conflict with families and couples. And dialectical behavior therapy has been the main therapy modality that I've used to learn about conflict and emotions and really challenging situations. And part of my work was through the Center for DBT and Families, which is the center with Alan and Armida Frazzetti, who worked with Marsha Linehan, and just to learn about how to apply everything from DBT to couples and families and other conflict situations. And so that has just been such a delight to do trainings there and learn so much and continue with my practice with conflict. And so I'm excited to just be here with you, Michelle, and learn as much as we can together about managing conflict together.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've really only ever used DBT in, I think, the two most common settings that it's used in, which is in individual client work where I have one person in the room and me, and then, in a skills group setting. And so to really use it when working with more than one person in the room, with couples, with families, just so needed. So I'm really grateful that you have that skill set that you're bringing into our conversation today. So there are 2 questions that we start off with asking every guest. So as you just told us, this is a little bit of where you are now, a little bit of your background, but all of us have that moment where we first hear about DBT and come across it, and we make that internal decision of like, oh, this is something that interests me. This is something that I want to do more of. So when was that moment for you when you first discovered DBT?
Like a lot of people who fell in love with DBT, it really directly related back to Marsha Linehan. I remember for me, I read her memoir, also some of her other books too, but I think, and just like really fell in love with Marsha Linehan's work. And this happened for me at my clinical psychology program, which was at Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I had a mentor named Nicholas Salzman who previously worked with Marsha Linehan years ago, and really just reading and falling in love with the style. I think also, and some listeners may know this or not, but there's this older book, Marsha Linehan's 1993 Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Borderline Personality Disorder. And it is just this book that's just like chock through of information. It's a lot to read and a lot to digest. But I remember talking with my sister, who is a therapist as well, and just saying, like, if I could pick one book for just CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy, I would pick this book because it's so thorough on just so many things that work in therapy, so many things that work in life to heal. And so it was really like that book, even though I don't like necessarily recommend it to all listeners for just like fun reading, but like it's just like the really solid book there from Marsha Linehan. So that was part of it. And then like getting to know Armida and Alan Ferzetti. So they're this couple that as well would have worked with Marsha Linehan years ago, and then decided to develop this branch that's related to conflict management. And they're both Linehan certified. They really care about DBT. So they weren't just trying to like replace like the Gottman method or other things like that. But they're like, there's some really useful things here that we need to use in this realm too. So that was exciting as well for me with that too. So that's how I first came across DBT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your path just like crossed, it feels like, with so many people who having that, personal connection to Marsha. I'm guessing that they were just really passionate about DBT, believed in it like to their core. And I just,
yes.
It's hard if you encounter people like that where they're like, oh my gosh, there's this there's DBT and they're so into it. Then like, how can you not get into it yourself? Like it could just be kind of infectious when you're with people who are, I don't know, sounds like maybe a weird way to put it, but like kind of in the inner circle, like close to the creator of something like this.
Yes.
That's really,
and extremely passionate. We can't underestimate that. Like, yes, the people that I encountered at the core were absolutely very passionate because they saw the difference that it made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really cool. So on to our second question that we ask every guest. Dialectically, there are great things about DBT. There can be things that could use improvement, as there are with all things in life, because nothing is perfect. So we like to ask guests, what is the thing you like the most about DBT? What's something that's maybe not your favorite that you wish were different? Just kind of start off with a very dialectical question like that.
Yeah, there's so many things I love about DBT, but when I was thinking about picking one, I am like, it's the foundation of emotions that it provides. That for me is huge. For some people, like really being able to understand anger, fear, shame, and to be able to understand the functions of emotions, it just has this like really core root in emotions. And that I think is one of my favorite things. There are other things as well. I love some of the distress tolerance skills. I'm going to be talking today about the stop skill and ways of integrating that with conflict, the tip skill, others as well. But if I had to pick one thing, I think it still is that core and emotions. When people change over time, it's often emotional shifts that are happening. It's not just words. And I think being able to be a part of people changing over time and seeing how it's emotion work that happens and deep emotion work that happens. And so I think that's probably my favorite thing. In terms of least favorite thing, it's not really a least favorite thing as much as just like future adaptations. I think, Marsha Linehan was always about science and progress. And so she herself would want DBT in like a scientific way to evolve over time, I think. And so I'm not against learning about other branches that have developed to try to understand like what we could be missing. And so, for example, the Radically Open DBT branch is a different branch that is not, it's not a Linehan branch, but it's just, an attempt to consider like, okay, for some individuals with more over control, maybe the same types of things don't work as well, or maybe too much structure could backfire. And so I think we need to always be open to new things that work for different people. And so I think Marsha Linehan would have been on board with that as long as we do it in a just a scientific way, a mindful way about the future and diversity. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense that, it's important to make sure that we're updating things as needed. I think sometimes what happens in our field is that once we put the label on something of like, this is an evidence-based practice, this kind of like, okay, it's been researched. We know that this works. Case closed. We give it a thumbs up, whereas it's like, but yeah, how could we continue looking deeper at how DBT can benefit people or where it, might use some improvement. And I am so in agreement with you about loving how DBT conceptualizes and talks about emotions and doesn't pathologize having really big emotions. And we say all the time on the podcast, it's not, emotions are not good or bad, positive or negative, right or wrong. Like they are what they are. And it's really all about once you feel an emotion, you don't have to make that emotion go away. It's just, what do you then do with it? How do you then act on it in a way that's going to be effective? And that's what DBT gives people, which is really amazing.
Yes, and individuals with intense emotions, myself included, others, it's also a strength. And it's just amazing, like to look at how intense emotions are a strength as well. And if there's a lot of suffering, it's hard. And it's like, yeah, I love that you underscored that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears now into the topic that we're here to discuss, we thought it would be really good to start off with, going back to basics and really getting a clear understanding from your perspective of how do we define and how would you define like what a conflict is, or like this term that we hear of conflict management? Like, what do those terms mean to you? And what do you think are maybe some misconceptions that people have when they hear the term conflict?
Absolutely. A conflict is when, Michelle, when you have a belief or something that you want, and I have a belief or something that I want, and they interfere somewhat with each other just by being what they are. And so, for example, like it could literally be that you want to go to Panera Bread and I want to go to Wendy's and we got 20 minutes. And so it's like your want is just your want. My want is my want. But because we have 20 minutes, they interfere with each other. And it can be the same with behaviors too. So that's why we know that a conflict itself is not inherently bad, because we know that a conflict will happen with diversity because people have different values, different beliefs, different behaviors, and sometimes they're going to interfere with each other. And that's where the term conflict management comes in, because then we can look at okay, is that tension between those beliefs or those behaviors handled in a functional way, in a way that's working for people, in a way that doesn't cause more suffering? Or is it handled in a way that causes a lot of suffering, and so forth? But the actual conflict itself is just differing beliefs or different behaviors that in some way are butting heads. In some way, me having this gets in the way of you getting that. And that's the conflict itself. And so I use the term conflict management a little bit more than conflict resolution because sometimes in conflict, the resolutions can be like sitting with shame and sadness and understanding the other person. And sometimes that doesn't feel like a resolution, but it is close to a resolution, actually like understanding the emotions. And so it depends on the term conflict resolution is used, but if the term conflict resolution is used to imply that there are no uncomfortable emotions, that it just all gets completely settled, sometimes that's unrealistic. But if we use these terms in ways that are like, okay, the emotions were understood, people understood each other, they moved through it, and in a constructive way, then I think that's a really useful way to think about it. And that is a conflict well managed, and what that is about. Yes. Yeah. And then you mentioned maybe some misperceptions. Is that right?
Yeah, like I think there can be a lot of things that people think about what conflict means that are not true. Like people, I'm thinking of just some of, we could say my own myths around conflict, right? That, if there's conflict, it means that term is synonymous with fighting. Or if there's conflict, it must mean that one or both people feel anger as the emotion driving it. Like that it can get painted in this really negative light. And maybe that's not actually true. So I don't know if there are like some other like really common myths that you hear about it that we can clear up, right at the beginning before we go further into the episode.
That sounds great. And I think you actually hit on I think the number one central myth, which is that conflict in all cases is bad, rather than conflict itself when they happen, and they happen in spaces that are diverse, and we like diversity, we like our differences. So that when conflict happens, it is uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to turn into tremendous suffering. And deeper understanding of emotions, deeper understanding of each other, deeper understanding of each other's personalities can make things manageable. The other misunderstandings I think that people have are based on culture, personality, emotion tolerance thresholds. So things like there might be somebody in your family who has a very low threshold for being able to have even conversations that have very intense emotional exchanges. Their threshold is much lower. And there might be somebody else who they can do those deeper, more intense conversations. And those two individuals may just misunderstand each other based on personality and emotional differences too. And so the one person who likes those intense emotional discussions might say to the other person, I don't feel connected when you sort of like back off from this conversation and don't have it with me or sort of separate. So I don't feel connected when you do that. The other person says, well, all of this intense emotional exchange is, you don't understand, it's too much for me and I'm just shutting down because I can't have this discussion at all. And so that's why I'm backing off. And so that is a personality misunderstanding, which as we talk about in DBT, people have biological predispositions to different levels of emotional intensity. and different ways of handling it. So that is a great example of like a personality misunderstanding regarding conflict. And people are different, and that's okay. And once you understand the personalities better of different people, it's easier to figure out how we can do this together more constructively when it comes to conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's all really, really great. It makes a whole lot of sense. I say to my clients quite often, I say, conflict is inevitable. And especially going back to what you were sharing at the beginning of your answer, like if we really just think of it as conflict, it's just two individuals having two different needs or beliefs. Therefore, there's a conflict there. But yeah, this is going to happen, potentially daily with the people that we're really close to in our lives because, yeah, we just are each different people who will want different things. But if we know how to manage it, especially what you were saying about knowing how to be able to not necessarily agree with, but at least like understand and like validate why the other person wants what they want or why they believe what they believe and find some like shared empathy and validation there, then that makes everything go so much smoother when we're encountering differences with one another.
Yes. And when people tell me, I want less conflict, I'm totally on board. When they say I want no conflict in my life, that's a little bit like saying, I don't want to ever experience sadness or shame and all of these other emotions that we talk about in DBT that are uncomfortable. And what happens is if we had no conflict, in other words, that would be like if I came to Michelle in a relationship, but I never expressed a difference, never expressed a value, a feeling, then actually we would lose connection. So people don't want no conflict. What they want is, or what most of us want is for it not to escalate to a tremendous amount of suffering. And that is very valid. Many people are exhausted of the degree of suffering they felt. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect, actually, that you were just starting to touch on emotions a little bit, because that was the next question I was curious about is when a conflict occurs, what are the most common emotions that you notice people experiencing?
Yeah, we have to talk about at least anger and shame, and we might go to others as well. So anger does get I would say a bad rep in conflict in terms of people are often working to reduce anger. But let's go back to understanding the function. So anger is here to protect us. Anger is here to protect loved ones. And sometimes anger is necessary. So, but often when we're talking about anger reduction, I do often find in conflicts that anger is like the tip of the iceberg. And I wish I had my diagram here that I often look up with like anger at the top and then all the other things underneath this iceberg that are all happening underneath, because there's often like so many other emotions of hurt and overwhelmed and just feeling sadness and dismay that are all functioning underneath anger. And anger is like that hard outer shell that we have when we're like, okay, like all of that's super uncomfortable to feel. So instead of expressing to Michelle like, oh, like that was hurtful, I might just wall up and go to blame and attack, because it's like, then I don't have to get underneath to all of that other stuff. And we don't have to go to that part. And so I'm often trying to like I honor people's anger. And there are some people who do not express anger enough. And then it's kind of a matter of like helping them to express it. But also there's often deeper layers in anger. So I'm often like kind of like cracking the surface of the anger to get underneath. And once I start talking about all the other emotions and all of those other emotions start coming out, then it's like something is happening in this conflict that's transforming and people are starting to connect again. Mm-hmm. It's just, so I can go into shame, but I think yeah, that's what I really encounter with anger. It is such a complicated emotion.
Yeah, it really is complicated. And yeah, it's, we could use a bunch of metaphors, right? It's the tip of the iceberg, or it's almost like, I don't know, the low hanging fruit, or it's just like the thing that's easy for people to go to right off the bat. But yeah, there's always a lot driving it.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of like, it's a layer it's important for us to be able to do that. But when we're connecting with people that we're close to, that we love, that we want to be connected to, if we're constantly sort of going back to that secondary emotional reaction of anger, then it's really hard to build that deeper connection. So oftentimes we have to go deeper. Another emotion I do want to touch on is shame. And I love thinking about shame because I think shame is one of those emotions that people will say, I really can't see how this one has a function or has a, like something in my life, because isn't shame all bad? And that, and I get it, right? Like shame feels, like your stomach feels like it's going to drop. It just feels like, your heart feels like it's going to drop. Emptiness. It's the most uncomfortable sensation. But if it evolved, it did evolve for some function, even if sometimes we experience it too much. So the function of shame is like to keep us like in groups without rejecting each other. Like the function of shame is like, it keeps us from like abandoning our kids. It's like, and it's hard because it's like trying to keep us like, it's trying to keep us from, to be quite blunt, like from me not like doing an illicit substance on this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. This is what shame does. It keeps us like glued to people. And we do need other people. Like it is important to be with other people. So that's what shame does. And so therefore shame pops up in a lot of conflicts, because when somebody says, you did not do the dishes, and then automatically there's this sense of, is this just about a behavior about the dishes, or is this a deep-seated sense of rejection? Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have two routes there. So one, you could try to be like, shame is arising inside of me. I'm accepting bodily sensations that are uncomfortable, and this is what's happening. You could also do some acceptance and kind of like flip to opposite action and be like, kind of standing up tall, and I am a person who is able to do the chores, and I am still capable, and that type of thing too. So you have different options with it, but no matter which way you go, you still got to learn how to work with shame, because it's still going to pop up. Mm-hmm. So shame is there in conflict, and you got to work through it.
Yeah, totally. For myself, shame definitely pops up. The other emotion that I tend to feel, that I'm wondering if you can speak a little more to, is I find myself feeling fear. Yes. Sometimes I think fearing that the thing that's causing the conflict is going to lead to disconnection with this person that I care about, or that now they are not just going to feel angry, but maybe act angrily towards me, and I fear that response from them. So how do you see fear coming up in conflict? Because I know I feel it a lot.
Absolutely. I think a lot of our listeners feel it a lot. I know I feel it with fear. So I think as well, like there's this page in the DBT handouts, which is like opposite action of fear. Mm-hmm. And I really like that page, because one of the things that it talks about is like, stay present and notice what's around you, and mindfully kind of remind yourself that you're not currently in danger. Because here's the thing, other people's anger does sort of provoke this sense of like potential threat. And it's a couple potential threats. So one threat is humans do have a deep-seated threat of the potential of something that could possibly be violent. So that's possible. And of course, if that were to be the case, the fear actually then would be useful
It would
to
check
leave.
the facts.
So it would, if that's possible. And in certain cases, it could be possible. But it's usually not. It's usually that we may have experienced something, and so it's popping up. But also, then we got to remember which shame is also related to the fear of rejection. And then we also have this deep-seated sense of like needing to be connected. And this is really, really core to being human. So I think it could be either one of those. And we need to signal safety. And for those who are starting to sort of feel this as we're talking about emotions, how much conflict is about our own internal world, because it's that moment where we're starting to like signal to ourselves or even like directly talk to ourselves and remind ourselves, yes, someone is getting angry. I am feeling fear and looking around me, noticing that I'm safe or noticing that I'm okay. Really anchoring back to reality. Yes. So there's more there. And I think actually when we talk later about like managing others, like difficult or toxic behaviors, this emotion's going to pop up again. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
It's a tough one.
We'll bookmark it for now and we'll return to it soon as we go through our questions here. Yeah, that sounds great. So when it comes to people struggling with handling conflict well, and we do see it, we could say like kind of blow up, go south, it just escalates. What do you think really gets in the way for people? You're speaking to this a little bit maybe about like the internal world idea. I love what you were saying just now about that. I don't know if it plays into this question, but like, yeah, there are reasons why conflict can implode sometimes in ways that it really doesn't need to.
Yes. There are different aspects of this depending on different people, but I think one of the aspects that I want to touch on from the start is, why is it that during conflict, we may say things impulsively? We might say things we would never say before, and we say it immediately, and it just is so hard not to, right? Why is it? This is because during conflict, there's also like adrenaline that's released and endorphins. It's actually, there's some positive experiences and neurotransmitters that are released. And this is surprising to people because we just talked about how people don't like conflict. That's true. But if you think about the reward involved in just winning or just getting something that we want, there's actually like a reward involved there. So it can actually be a little bit addicting. And it's interesting to think of it that way. We don't typically think of it that way, but for couples or others who are like, but why do we keep going back and fighting about that again and again? And we don't really, like, why do we do this? It's like, it is actually kind of addicting and it's very reinforcing. So, and that's that sort of adrenaline. So for those people, they need a lot on stop, tip. It's just a lot of like pausing and managing the own impulsive parts of ourselves, because that is really crucial. Yeah. And then another one is that you also have people who are afraid of conflict. And what they sometimes don't realize is that is just another form of being scared of their emotions. So when we're talking about not handling conflict well, it's like if I struggle with my emotions, which being human, all of us do, right? But if I really struggle a lot with my emotions and I'm so, I'm really struggling with feeling my feelings, then it's going to be hard with conflict because everything is firing. I mean, we just talked about how shame's going to pop up. We talked about how fear is going to pop up. So so this is why we struggle with conflict too, because we're struggling with even noticing, wow, like all of these emotions are popping up as soon as my mother mentioned this. And then I need to pause, and then I need the awareness of what's going on inside, and all of this is happening super, super quick. And so this is why we struggle. Yeah. And yeah, so that's some of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you were saying, there's really those people who act very impulsively in conflict, like they come back to it time and time and time again. And then there's the people who are scared of conflict. I'm definitely more the second. I like to avoid it. But a big part of that is so true to what you're saying. It's like I'm, feeling this thing within myself that I maybe feel shame about or fear about. Well, if I tell the other person that I have this need or this thing that I want to do, then they're going to get upset with me, is what I tell myself. And then I feel scared of them getting upset with me because I don't want that disconnection. So then I just avoid it, right? I don't want to feel those feelings. I don't want to feel that fear. I don't want to go there. And yeah, it really is enlightening what you're saying about, me wanting to avoid that conversation with another person because I sense it's probably going to be a conflict. Like the other person is going to maybe not be on board with the thing that I want. Then it is. It's kind of this self-abandonment. Like, just don't be with those emotions. Don't feel those feelings type of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing that those of us out there that are conflict avoiders do is we feel shame and other emotions. And so sometimes we do not quite say things accurately or make small lies that are not on purpose, but it's just to smooth things over. And so it might be like, oh, totally. Yeah. Like this is very common. Like social psych research shows that like some degree of lying is like kind of ubiquitous. So it's not like this moral judgment thing, right? But like it's something where it might be with, let's say with your mother or so forth, and you don't want to tell her that you don't plan to come for the next vacation or something like that, or like you don't plan to come. And then it's just like, oh, like maybe I'll be there and like all of this, right? And we're doing that because we feel those intense emotions. It's scary. There's fear. And then that comes at the consequence of we don't have accurate expression and connection. So we end up a little bit more disconnected, or that thing that we wanted to be validated about was not validated because we didn't tell them the valid thing. And then it kind of escalates like that. So I think what we need to do is not, rather than dance around it, we need to increase accurate expression, but also increase validation. Just saying the thing that's tough, but it also is just accurate, but also saying it with a lot of validation for the other person's emotions and just up that validation, that care, that concern, but still saying the accurate thing. And it's hard to do. It takes, the courage and the tolerance of emotions, and it's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of on that, right? Because it's hard to do. I think there's sort of, which we're going to get into in a moment, but I want to insert this question too of like, there are those things for us to do in the conflict, right? Like say you're in that conversation with your mom, telling her in the moment, Mom, I've decided I'm not going to come on the next family vacation, right? Like you're in it, you're doing the thing. But then there's all of the, I don't know, like kind of the mental buildup before you ever utter a word to her about not wanting to go on the vacation. So I notice for myself a lot that I get really stuck in rumination, anticipating, right? The conflict is coming. It's going to be bad, like telling myself those things. So what do you most recommend people do to kind of get out of that ruminating headspace, the way they can set themselves up to then say show up to that conversation with your mom and just feel more confident voicing your need, even if your mom is going to, like lose her mind about it, like for you to still be really rooted prior to any conflict.
Yes, I am really thinking about the power of present moment awareness. But here's what I think. I think it's really difficult in this area because during a conflict itself, we are creating these negative conditioned associations because it went challenging or poorly, so that the next time we're ruminating before. But if we can do the next difficult exchange, as hard as it is, and stay really present and really and really doing that opposite action of fear and really kind of going where angels fear to tread, that sort of phrase from Marsha. If we can do that, it's almost like we're less scared the next time. It's a little bit of, it's like exposure therapy, but showing that it doesn't always have to go in the same type of way. Because I do think we are, we're scared because we are experiencing the emotions of the past. We are caught up in the shame, the fear that I felt last time. And our body is warning us again. It's going to come again. I don't like it. 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 So when we learn how to be present in these conversations and not judge ourselves as harshly in them too, because that's probably part of it too, then it's like, okay, I'm ready to step up again. It's this, I can do it. With a little bit of added tip skill, if you are overwhelmed, please do, because I put my face in cold water sometimes. Sometimes emotions are just too intense.
Yeah, like do that before you are around the person and open your mouth to say the thing. Yeah, definitely. No, that is so good. And that is, I think, so much of what it is for me, but I see it with my clients. Like, I'm really good, of course, at reminding my clients of this whole idea of like, we don't know. Yes, right. It has gone that way the last 5 times. It could go that way again. It could also go differently. We do not know. And I find, again, I'm not as good at reminding myself of that, but I think that idea can be really calming of like, in this moment, I haven't spoken to this person yet. I just want to be mindful when I'm in the conversation and want to be mindful right now before I have it of just, what is right now. No, that's so great. Shifting gears a little bit, because you're a psychologist, right? So you are sitting with your clients, helping them learn and use DBT to manage conflict for themselves. Like, what are, you've touched on a couple skills already, but like, what are really like your go-to skills that you find yourself most recommending to clients professionally or like using in real time in a session with clients? How is DBT most typically showing up there?
Absolutely. The first one I want to mention is the stop skill. I have loved the stop skill for so long. I think it honestly saves lives. I've had clients tell me that it saved their life in different circumstances. And when I think about the stop skill, if you could just picture like somebody who really uses the stop skill, and I don't want to like characterize different like fiction characters, but sometimes for people to envision stop skill or wise mind, I have them envision like wise fiction characters, kind of like maybe like Yoda or like there's just like different characters, right? And it's like if you picture somebody who is pretty zen, it's kind of hard to have big conflicts with them.
Because they're not reactive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they're not
rooted
very...
themselves, so nothing you really say or do is gonna like shake them up and make them have this big response back to you.
Yes, and well, I'm on this journey with all of this, and I would not use that label Zen to describe myself. I would say that I had to learn how to pause, even brief pauses, like just making them normal. And then in conversations where everything just goes. And so we practice so much with the stop skill with couples and families for like stop and then take a step back and then notice internally. And then we do the mindset shift. And that's like where we add wise mind, like you're trying to access your wisdom and then you're going back. And this actually can look a little bit different for different couples, for example, because couples usually know about taking time outs. But depending on the dynamic of what's going on, some people might need to be taking more breaks and others might need to be like regulating their emotions and staying in longer. So it just sometimes it depends on people's like tendencies and what they need to be doing instead. But stopping enough to get into that wiser space and then coming back, and that's huge. And sometimes the stop skill you could like add in, so stop, take a step back, and then take a step back, tip. And that's where the tip happens or whatever happens. And then we might even add on the P of it, another part of the thing from the Center for DBT Families, which is relationship mindfulness, which is just simply like be mindful of the fact that this is your lovely friend, lovely partner. So you might just be mindful of them a moment and what your intentions are and your goals, and then come back. So there's some things we can do to really expand that skill. The other thing that's a little bit different about DBT conflict work is some couples will tell me, I didn't like going to couples therapy because we just argued with each other and I felt like it was just such a negative experience and we just like rehashed everything. And this feels a little different because we don't in our sessions really practice doing the same things that we don't want to keep doing. And so basically I will in a very validating way interrupt if one person's saying to the other something that's not helpful for the discussion. There's a lot of interjecting and interrupting to create a different type of space and dialogue. I actually want the space to be, it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, but I want it to be a positive enough experience that people actually don't hate family or couples therapy. And I think that's huge because again, a lot of couples or families feel so burnout or demoralized with it. It can be tough work. So
yeah, like in your work with people, you really help show them, create for them that part of stop, which is the taking a step back.
Yes.
Like they may not think to do it themselves or know how to do it themselves. And so then you, as you know, the clinician in the room, you get to, interject and really say, okay, we're taking a pause here or, something along those lines. So then they get to see, when we can kind of pull ourselves back a little bit, then it creates an opening to do something that actually feels a lot better. And it goes back to what you were sharing at the beginning of, then we can maybe get to a place of seeing each other a little more clearly, understanding each other a little more clearly. But if that taking a step back is not happening and not being imposed by the clients themselves or by like the therapist, then the same cycles are just going to repeat over and over again, and nothing's going to change or get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And sometimes too, in terms of couples or families, sometimes we'll say, I'm worried that you won't get a sense of like what our conflict is or dynamic is. And so we will act things out. I mean, they can definitely act it out or something like that. Like we want to see that in a sense of like actually literally acting, and that's fine. We also, and they'll laugh. They themselves will think it's funny when they're trying to describe it, and that's okay. And then in certain cases with both people's permissions and other ethical things, they will just simply record something. But I think we're all about understanding it and noticing it, and we're not afraid to notice what did happen and to lay everything out on the table. But we will not repeat the same cycles as we're practicing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, our last question that we have for you, it's really a big one because what at least I found in my life before I asked the actual question is that, I could take, say, the exact same concern to two different people in my life. I may say it in the exact same way, same tone, same words, everything coming from me. Let's say it's the one from earlier, right? You didn't do the dishes. I say that phrase to two different people. One person reacts, we could say really calmly, oh, yep, Michelle, you're right. So sorry, I'll get to them tonight. The other person is like, well, you haven't done the dishes lately either. Like just totally different response. So we've already combed over quite a bit of, the importance of what's going on internally for each of those individuals for why they would respond so differently to the same thing. But, really wanting to ask this question around what do you recommend to our listeners who are dealing with really difficult people in their lives? They may have a spouse or a family member who's got some narcissistic traits going on, or, that kind of a thing. So that's going to be a tough person to engage in, we could say like healthy conflict with. So what do you recommend they do in situations like that?
Yes, let's unpack this because I want to tell some about my own journey of really responding to these situations and how it's changed. I think that like a lot of other individuals with sensitivity and mixed emotional experiences, I used to, when somebody else was really angry and expressing their anger really intensely, I used to do what I thought was going toward empathy. But it really was avoidance, dancing around.
Like fawning.
Being and feeling fear, maybe trying to appease, doing lots of different things. But what I didn't realize is that I wasn't really understanding what it's like for a person, for them, when they are the person who is doing just a very like angry rant or a very attacking behavior. What is it like for them psychologically? If I'm going to be empathetic, I think it involves a realistic viewpoint of what it would be like for a person in that mode. And what I realized is when a person is experiencing extreme anger, and of course there can be layers underneath, but what is showing on the surface is the extreme anger rant, and that's all they can do. They will say, I'm seeing red. Then what's happening for them is they are unloading and releasing and expressing everything, and it's all coming out. So it's possible that afterwards that person might feel a little bit lighter. They might feel a little guilty too. It might be a combination of different things, but they might feel a little lighter. But other people do dislike it. Other people do feel harmed. So the most loving thing you can do is you have to create that buffer to protect yourself in a healthy way. Because when you can do that, you can actually then be empathetic with the genuine person underneath. But if you take the punches and you absorb it and you just take all of that energy in, you're not able to. You're not able to. And so that was a big shift for me to realize that the most empathetic thing to do for somebody who is currently, like, let's say they are cussing me out on this video call, might be to shut the laptop. It might be. Now, it's two parts, right? It's like understanding that for them, they're releasing all of that. They might regret it later. And I need to not be soaking that in, because if I do soak that in too, I'm the one who's going to carry the resentment later toward them, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to stay in relationship with them. And so that type of thing. So it's really shifting to making sure that those of us that are more sensitive or express softer emotions really get into the mind of what is it like to go into this mode of intense anger and attacking sometimes. And then so they can really see how the most empathetic thing is to protect themselves first. And you can do even some selective detachment too, which is like, I'm actually going to like distance myself psychologically a moment from the F-bombs, right? You're going to not actually go super close and in depth in that moment. Of course, anger is an iceberg. So some people will crack with their anger and they'll switch to shame and they'll switch to sadness. And then you can go directly to their shame and sadness and you can just like draw that out and pull it out and you can like have this real relationship. But some people, they will have a full like shell and they will just attack and just anger. And then you have to detach and protect and realize that is the most optimal thing for the relationship. And that's hard for people to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really hard to create that buffer. But like you're saying, I mean, it's really essential.
Yes.
Because so often, right, we switch into, more people-pleasing behaviors, just trying to like cool them down, right? Like we want to sort of lean in or keep talking to them or try to say or do something to maybe make it better. At least that's what I do. But
sure.
Sometimes that's the best thing is like, whoa, they're at 10 right now. I do need to disengage for a bit until they're maybe down closer to like a 6, and it can actually be reasonable. And if they don't know how to get themselves down to a 6, like if they don't know how to emotionally regulate themselves or don't see the need for that, like, okay, then it is maybe going to wear on our relationship a little bit. But I have to start with the buffer and then be able to hopefully come back and, like you said, kind of really revisit or understand what else is going on there for them. Like, why does this person get to attend so much? There's some reason for it.
Well said. And I think as well, when we look at this with text messages and emails, so it's a little similar. So what we want to do is if you get a long angry rant via email or text message, I know one thing, no immediate replies. That long angry rant text message or email. Now, if Michelle sends me a little happy emoji, it doesn't matter whether I immediately reply to that. Happy emojis. Also, if we're having a real deep exchange, but if you send me a long angry cussing me out, no immediate replies, and that's going to work to everyone's favor. There's nothing immediately that you can say when somebody is experiencing an intense angry rant on the heat of the moment via text or email that's going to like fix it for them in that split moment. Now, It depends on the person. It's for some people, you can look at those text messages or emails over time, and you can see that for some people, it may just be like 10 minutes or whatever. For some people, it might be longer of once they do calm down and they can handle the exchange well. But it is and this is what's so hard for people to believe, it is a gift for you to pause, for you to be able to develop the skill of pausing for them. It's a gift, and it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
It feels like you're being mean to them, but you're not. It's the gift.
I've been working on that for so long with a client of mine, right? Like her and her partner get into these exchanges when he's at work, and I'm like, you guys have to stop like sending these texts to each other, But I was just thinking of, the DBT skill of ride the wave, right? When we think about just how this is how emotions work universally, right? We feel something and then it peaks and then it will come back down to the other side. But yeah, when we're, in conversation and communication with somebody who is at the peak of their emotional wave, that is not the time to engage with them, try to reason with them, try to get them to understand your point of view. Nothing that good is going to happen when they are at the peak. Like we have to pause. I love that you're speaking to like how communication can look when we're not in person with people and face to face, because so much of our communication is like over text. But yeah, we have to wait for it to peak and go back down for them.
Yes. I love that we're talking about this, because we're really noticing more and more with conflict that the way to manage and work with people's anger, for example, can be very different than when they flip to sadness or shame or other emotions. And even for this one, if somebody sends me something about them being hurt or different types of ways, responding could be very helpful and empathetic and kind. It's specifically for this specific emotion of anger, because they are venting and releasing it all. So they are okay in that moment. Now, some people do flip between that and the other side. Don't know for podcast listeners, but something like, okay, I'm going to hurt myself or something. But that'll often happen as in terms of like a flip to the other emotion. And then you can lean in again. You can lean in because they've let their spikes and darts down, and they let you in. But when they put the darts up and start going like that, you gotta step back. You gotta protect.
Oh,
so you're ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that really brings us to closing out the episode here. So before we get to closing moment, how can our listeners connect with you, learn more about you? I'm sure some of them would love to follow up after this. So yeah, tell us where they can find you.
Absolutely. So my practice is called Fostering Growth and Cooperation. And so fosteringgrowthandcooperation.com is where I have the different resources and where I'm integrating things. And you can follow us on Instagram with Growth and Cooperation. Right now, we're working on this family peace program to really help with learning the skills for families. And I also have opportunities for couples as well. And so, so fosteringgrowthandcooperation.com is where to find me and the other students that work with me in our practice too. So, thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll make sure to post those links in the show notes. We'll also post them in our Facebook group. So, that's
awesome.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to move into closing moment. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, see if it's possible to just pause for a brief moment And if it's safe and you feel comfortable doing so, you can close your eyes. Really let yourself settle into this exact moment that you're in right now. Just noticing your breath. And when you find yourself feeling settled into your body, in your mind's eye, start to think about a recent difficult interaction that you had with someone in your life. A conflict that was not well managed and didn't go the way you hoped it would. Imagine what took place with you and that other person. Almost like you're watching a movie of it playing out for what each of you said to each other, how you responded. Reminding yourself as you do that in this moment, you are safe. If your body starts to become activated again, coming back to your breath. Once you've imagined that conflict playing all the way through, now imagine almost rewinding it. Going back to the beginning and seeing it play out again. But this time, noticing within yourself how you are acting and responding skillfully. Noticing when you may need to take a step back. Create a buffer for yourself if needed. Becoming aware of what your wise mind wants to say. And speaking those words. Noticing yourself feeling present and mindful of your own internal emotional state. This time, as you watch it again, really paying attention to how different it feels. How different you feel with this other person in this conflict. Reminding yourself that you have the ability within you to use these skills in the moment when you need them. And holding on to how it feels to imagine yourself behaving so skillfully in this moment. And when you're ready, you can let go of visualizing yourself in the conflict, starting to once again notice your breath, coming back into this present moment, opening your eyes when you're ready. Thank you, Samuel, for being here today. I really enjoyed speaking about this topic with you.
I really enjoyed speaking with you too and being here.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time. To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me Podcast.